Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today we're going to talk about The Hollow Crown, Season 2, Episode 1, Henry VI, Part 1. Usually it's just me, but today I have my friend Crystal with me. Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Christina.
Hi. Henry VI, Part 1. This is one of the ones that I'm not as into. Like, Henry V is really good. And
Yeah.
Richard III is really good. But this one I'm like, eh. So we start with Gloucester is there. And he's played by Hugh Bonneville. And I forgot to look up Hugh Bonneville. Gloucester is the king's uncle.
Downton Abbey.
Oh, he was in Downton Abbey. Who was he in
Yeah.
Downton Abbey?
Yeah, he was like the Earl.
Oh, okay.
He was like
okay. Like an important guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's...
Which, interesting,
mm-hmm.
I don't know that this is pertinent, but the Downton Abbey where they live is
Mm-hmm.
actually where Lord Carnarvon lived, who funded the King Tut tomb opening.
Very cool. And then we see Exeter is also there. He's played by Anton Lesser, who is Qyburn in Game of Thrones. And we see baby Henry. He is king, but he's far too little. This is not age appropriate. He looks barely more than a newborn. And he was a baby, so I think they're just trying to get that point across. But he was like 9 months old, and that baby was not 9 months old.
No.
But he was a baby king at 9 months, which Mary Queen of Scots beat when she became queen at 6 days old, so... Okay. But he was a fairly young UK king. And then we just skip forward to 17 years later, because we're not trying to act with babies.
No.
And then we see King Henry VI, and he's played by Tom Sturridge, and he's in a movie called Velvet Buzzsaw with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's on Netflix, so if you want to watch it, it's about art. And then Richard Plantagenet goes to see his dying uncle, and Richard Plantagenet is played by Adrian Dunbar. And in the movie Emily, about Emily Bronte, he plays her father.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, it's interesting.
He has a very distinguishable nose. His nose is different.
Yeah. His uncle was Mortimer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was played by the guy who played Viserys in King Henry IV.
And who is he this time?
Michael Gambon?
Gambon?
How do you say his name?
I think it's Michael Gambon.
Okay. Didn't he play Albus Dumbledore?
He is. He's the second Dumbledore after the first Dumbledore died. From movie 3 on, he is Albus Dumbledore. I did not recognize him until I looked it up, and I was like, oh!
I saw the name when they were doing the credits, like before it really started, and I'm like, oh, I know that name.
And he's all, I was robbed of my inheritance, you need to get it, so it like goes back to the other one, right? Like,
Right.
And he sort of was. They show him the family tree, and he was descended from Lionel's daughter. So if they weren't doing if they were doing proper English succession, yes, he should have come first. But the French didn't count women, so the English for a while were like, we're not going to count women either. If you come through a woman, you don't count.
Yeah.
And Richard Plantagenet, so there was 5 brothers that were the sons of Edward III when he died. And Edward III's sons were, well, Edward, but he had already died, Lionel, John, Edmund, and Thomas. And Edward was the father of King Richard II. Lionel's daughter is who Dumbledore is descended from.
Okay.
Then there's John, and that's who King Henry IV and V and VI are descended from.
John of Gaunt, correct?
Mm-hmm. And then there's Edmund, and that's also who Richard Plantagenet, he's descended from 2 of the brothers. Yeah. And then there's Thomas of Gloucester. So there's this whole thing where they skipped the one where he was descended through his Lionel's daughter, and so they're like, no, you come up next. After it was a whole confusing thing, but
Yeah.
They were looking at the family tree, and there was an argument to be made for that they skipped him, but you can't just be like, you skipped me before I was born, so now it's my turn. That's not how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So, and then Mortimer dies. So, R.I.P. Dumbledore. That was short. It was a short part.
Death scene, which is
Yep. And then he brings out the family tree and he shows all his friends. And he's like, look, they skipped me, those bitches. My uncle just pointed it out, and now I see it. And they're in the garden and with Richard Plantagenet. And
Mhm.
Warwick is there, played by Stanley Townsend. And he plays Vladimir Trunkov in Cars 2.
okay.
So that's just a fun fact. Vladimir Trunkov. I'm assuming he's some sort of Russian car. And then we see Somerset, who's Ben Miles, and he played Peter Townsend in The Crown, Margaret's boyfriend,
Yes,
Princess
he
Margaret's
did.
boyfriend.
Yes.
I liked him in The Crown. I was
Hmm.
like, get it, Margaret. And then we see Suffolk, who is James Watkins, who, in the animated Batman Caped Crusader on Amazon Prime, he voices Alfred Pennyworth.
Oh.
So feel free to watch that. It is a cartoon, but it is rated 18 plus, so it is an adult cartoon. And he plays
Oh.
Alfred Pennyworth. And then they are picking sides for their civil war, and they're being all like symbolic about it with the flowers.
Yeah, I
And
thought that was a really good illustration.
yeah. And
Um,
Plantagenet picks white because he's a York. And Somerset's like, no, fuck that. I pick red. I'm a Lancaster. And then I think another guy who I think is Vernon, but I wasn't totally sure, picks a white rose. And then Suffolk picks red and Warwick picks white. They're like picking sides, basically. White
right.
versus red.
Hmm.
And Somerset's like, you can't just go with Plantagenet because his father was a traitor. And his father was killed for being a traitor.
Oh, okay.
He was plotting against this king's father or grandfather. I don't remember, but
Okay.
he was a traitor. And they thought, back then, they definitely thought, like, being a traitor was a genetic trait.
Oh,
Like, son of a
yeah.
traitor will be a traitor also.
Yeah. Well, they
And,
also thought women shouldn't look at ugly people in case the baby
right,
came out ugly, so.
right. They thought a lot of things. They thought your womb wandered around your body. And when you got hysterical, that's because your womb had wandered up to your brain. So there's that. I hate it when my womb goes wandering.
I don't have to worry about that anymore.
And Richie P, which is what I'm calling Richard Plantagenet, Richie P,
Okay.
he's all F you. Like, maybe my dad was killed for being a traitor. So what? Like, that doesn't change the fact that I'm still your king.
Hmm.
And Henry Six, which is what I'm calling King Henry the Sixth, he's still around. And Uncle Gloucester is helping. Now, Uncle Gloucester, his name is Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester. So I'm going to call him Uncle Hump, just so you know, because that's what he is in my notes. Trying to make this shit interesting.
And
So,
he was Henry V's younger brother.
yes, Henry V's youngest brother.
Okay.
But all the other brothers are dead at this point. So he's the only one
Okay.
left, the only uncle left standing.
Gotcha.
And the Bishop of Winchester is there, who he calls uncle, and it took me 100 years to figure out who this man was because I'm like, no, all the other uncles are dead. Why is he calling
Hmm.
this guy? So the Bishop of Winchester was the son of John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford. So he's from the same line as the Tudors. He's from the line of bastard kids of John of Gaunt who got legitimized
Oh, okay.
after their birth. So he is the king's dad's half uncle, which is why he's calling him uncle, which
Okay.
makes him the cousin of Margaret Beaufort. So, and then that's the mother of King Henry VII. So that's where that fits
Okay.
in. So it is his uncle. It's his half uncle because different
Half
baby
great
mamas of
uncle.
John of
Yeah.
Gaunt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he calls him uncle. But it took me a minute to figure out who this uncle was because I'm like, there are no
Yeah.
uncles left.
I was like, which one is that? I'll just let
Yeah.
Christina
No,
tell me.
yeah. He's like a distant uncle. But technically, I mean, he only has the two left, really, so what's he gonna
Right,
do?
right.
And Gloucester's annoyed, and Henny Six is like, can't we get along? I know I'm young. I'm basically a baby still. I mean, he's 17, 18 years
Mm-hmm.
old at this point, but he's like, but fighting is bad. Like, let's just get along.
Mm-hmm.
Can't we just get along? He had a reputation for being like passive, thoughtful, kind of pensive. He liked to read a lot. He was
Yeah.
thoughtful. He was a thoughtful king.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was a dove, not a hawk.
exactly. And Warwick was like, yeah, yield, bitches. Like, let's not fight. Warwick is very aggressive in this version. I guess he's aggressive in almost every version, though. The Kingmaker, right? He's the
Yeah.
Kingmaker,
Yeah.
so they
Okay.
make
Yeah.
him. And Richard Plantagenet is here to see the king. And Henny Six makes Richie P Duke of York. So now
Mm-hmm.
he's like officially, like he's past his father's traitorness and he is now a
Right.
duke.
Mm-hmm.
And the ships are ready and they are outgoing and we are in France. And Henny Six is in France. And they're all God save King Henry, King of France, King of England and France. So because the 100 Years' War is still going on, we're towards
Right.
the end.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably past 100 years at this point, I think.
Oh yeah.
We're like
Yeah.
108, 9 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And so he's still claiming to be the king of France from his great grandfather. I don't know, whatever Edward III was to him. If
Okay.
Henry VI, Henry V, Henry IV, John of Gaunt, Edward III. So his father, grandfather, two times great grandfather,
Okay.
Edward III, if I counted that right. And Talbot arrives with a letter from the Dauphin Charles, and he gives it to
Mm-hmm.
Gloucester. He's like, read this, uncle. Like, I'm not sure if the king doesn't know how to read. He does know how to read. He reads a lot, but
Right.
he doesn't read his own letters. That's so pedestrian. And they find out that Joan of York took back Rouen. That Rouen was under siege.
Mm-hmm.
And Joan of Arc showed up, and they just, like, killed it and got Rouen back. And they're like, so does France revolt? And they're like, totally. Like, they're revolting, but
Mm-hmm.
also, like, they didn't want you in charge of them ever. That's why you've been at war for
Right.
100 years.
Right. Right.
And when Henry Six's dad, Hal the Fifth, was
Mm-hmm.
king, he got a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
France is like, oh, now that he's dead, this king is very thoughtful and quiet and pensive. He's not going to fight
Mm-hmm.
back. And they were right. So Somerset and York meet with the king. And the king is trying to be like, look, I'm on everybody's side. What if I take both your flowers? And I'm just like, I'm team everybody. He's like Donna Kelsey at the Super Bowl when the Chiefs played the Eagles and she had to have the jersey that was
Oh.
half and
Yeah.
half.
Yeah.
That's what the king is like right now. He's like, I love you both. And you should work together. And
Except he didn't put the roses together, did he?
no,
No.
he didn't. He's just like, look, you can both be my friend. You don't have to be friends with each other, but you should work together because you're both my friend. It's like the opposite of my enemy is my friend. Like my friend of my friend
Mm-hmm.
should be
Mm-hmm.
friendly with my friends.
Right.
And York and Warwick are chatting, and they're like, it's so rude that the king even tolerates Somerset because he's a dick.
Well, I guess
And
we should mention that he dropped the white one
mm-hmm,
and put the red one in
yeah,
his
I mean, because he has
clothes.
favorites. We're being like, he is a Lancastrian after all, so he's gonna
Yeah.
pick them for sure. And then we see Rouen, and we see Joan of Arc, and she has visions. And the French are gonna
Mm-hmm.
fight the English, and there's inspirational speeches on both sides. Like we go back and forth between inspirational speech. Like we got this, we're gonna
Right.
do this, we're
Right.
gonna kill it, woo! And then there's a lot of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
in
there's like a
between,
whole aside with
mm-hmm,
a father and son. You need to run. No, you
yeah,
run. I can't live without you. You need to
yep,
do the family line. No, if you die, I die.
mm-hmm. And Somerset is getting a message. This is mixed in with the fighting. And they're like, you need to join York. And he's like, sorry, it's too late. He's getting a massage.
That's right. I saw that.
And
I
he's
was
just
like, oh, that
like,
guy knows how to travel in style.
yeah. He's just like, I'm getting massaged. I don't got time for this. And then this is when young Talbot shows up at the battle.
Right. That's what I was
And
talking about.
yeah.
Talbot.
And they're like, you have to leave. No, I'm not leaving without you. Like, they're staying together. So they fight side by side. Together they live or die. But then Senior can't find Junior, and Junior is dead. And so Senior monologues, and he's like, oh my gosh, my son is dead. And while he's monologuing, Joan of Arc just comes up and just kills him.
Shanks him in the back of the neck.
Yep. She's just like, shut up. I don't want to hear it.
Shakespeare did Joan of Arc dirty, because
for
I don't
sure.
think she was aggressive like that at all.
I mean, she was mostly just the motivational speaker before the battle.
Right.
Yeah. And the Dauphin is there, and I feel like Joan of Arc is a much bigger character than the Dauphin. They were basically like, this guy was nothing without this lady, but also she was crazy.
When she comes in, the Dauphin does a one-on-one fight with her, and if she can beat him, then he'll take her counsel.
Yeah, that did not happen in real life.
No.
They just checked if she was a virgin, and then said, let's try her out in battle. Joan of Arc is all, we won, bitches, and then both Talbots are buried. And Warwick says the two English armies must join into one. He's like, look, Somerset has to help us. He can't just be massaging all day long. Like, we need help fighting this battle. And then they bust into Rouen, and Joan grabs her sword, and she hears voices, and then there's more fighting. And Somerset is sneaking around the castle, and he finds a fair woman. And he's like, who are you? And she's like, Margaret, daughter of Anjou. So it's Margaret of Anjou. And Somerset asks Margaret if she wants to be. He's like, hey, you're pretty. You want to be the queen? And she's like, just the daughter of a duke? Like, I don't think, like, I'm queen level, really. And then we cut to Richard Plantagenet, Richie P., is looking for Joan of Arc, and he calls her a witch, and he finds her, and Joan is captured.
Oh, I like how they did that side by side, where Somerset finds a wife, and York finds the antagonist.
Yeah.
You know, like
the witch.
Yeah.
Burn the witch.
But did you recognize who Margaret of Anjou was?
I did not.
So I recognized her, and I was like, where did I see her from? It's from Wheel of Time.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch that.
I watched the first season.
I was so confused. I started watching it. I was so confused.
Well, honestly, I've read the books, and I was confused. So.
Yeah. I've actually, my husband, he read the books, and he's like, yeah, I don't know that they did a great job adapting that. And then one of my other friends who records with me sometimes, Shar, she also watched it, and she also read the books, and she's like, yeah, no, it was confusing. No.
And I think one of the characters is throughout all of the books, but the guy who plays him didn't want to do it anymore, so they killed him off. And I'm like, how is that going to happen?
Yeah. I really liked the actress they got to play Margaret of Anjou. I thought she did a really excellent job.
Yeah,
I liked her a lot.
Sophie Okonedo.
Yes, yeah. I liked her a lot.
And she plays one of the lady in charge of all the in Wheel of Time. Anyway.
And basically Somerset's like, give me permission to have your daughter. Like, please, can I have her to be the Queen of England? And the Duke of Anjou's like, yeah, sure, in trade for some land.
Mm-hmm.
And then he human traffics his daughter for like a whole ton of land.
Right.
And
Anjou and Maine.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing. Anjou, Maine, and I'll get there. I don't know. I wrote it down somewhere.
Okay.
And then Somerset leaves, but not before he kisses Meg, because he's got the hots for Meg.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I was like, after I watched that, I was like, there's no way that that's how that happened. And so I had to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to have been maybe a political ploy by Charles, the King of France, to like, I'm not actually sure.
About how the marriage came together, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was sort of the deal, because she wasn't just found by Somerset. She was, her mother was the sister, I think, of King Charles, or the niece of King Charles. She was somehow related. She was like the niece, distant of the king. And this was part of the deal. Like, we have this relative, she's pretty, she could be queen, she
Mm-hmm.
could end the war. That was kind of more of the deal.
Gotcha.
But this, I think, is because there were rumors later that, like, Margaret of Anjou, she's known as the she-wolf of France, right? And she got a bad
Yeah.
reputation for, like, maybe her son wasn't her son. Like, her son was her son. Maybe her son wasn't her husband's son.
Right.
And one of the suspected potential baby daddies was Somerset. But there was a bunch of them because there was tons of rumors about her that probably weren't
Yeah.
true. But
Well, anytime a woman is in a position of power and exerts
yeah.
that power, people are
Well,
going to
and
make
her husband
rumors.
was that quiet, thoughtful, pensive,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a little more outspoken, so she got that reputation. Plus, they'd been at war with France for 100 years, so they didn't really
Right.
love that she was French.
No.
And she's still in her PJs. This whole thing happens while she's in her PJs. And Plantagenet, we see Richie P there, and he's like, "Bring forth the sorceress." And Joan comes out. She's got a shaved head. She's all beaten. They were pretty shitty to her in prison.
Yeah.
And she's put on the pyre, and she monologues, and they light the pyre, and Joan dies. It was
If I
awful.
recall correctly, the only thing they were able to charge her with was wearing men's clothes.
Yeah,
And that's why she died.
yeah, because that's something only heretics do. And even there was a rule that if you repented, you wouldn't be burned at the stake. And she repented, and she wore a dress. And then they took her dress away and left her men's clothes. And they're like, "What do you want to do? Wear men's clothes or be naked?" And so she put the men's clothes back on. They're like, "Oh, she's a witch."
Yep. Yeah.
They were pretty awful to her.
Yeah.
And like multiple ladies of the court demanded that she not be raped in prison. And we don't know if she was or not, but multiple ladies in the court were like, "You guys better not." Like, multiple times it
Yeah.
was said by high up women in the court. So this was women supporting other women to some degree because she still got burned at the stake.
Yeah.
But Somerset is talking to Henny Six about Meg, and he's like, "She's way hot, but like not too hot, you know? Like she's super hot, but not like so hot it's terrible." Whatever that means. And Henny Six asks his Uncle Hump for permission. "Can I marry this hot girl?" And his uncle's like, "You're already betrothed to an Armagnac, and she's hella rich. She has so much money. So don't throw that away. Like, Meg does not have fat cash. She will not give you a good dowry." Which was true.
Agnac was only an earl.
Armagnac. Yeah, but he was
Armagnac.
on the Armagnac Burgundian. The Armagnac Burgundian Civil War had happened, and he was the head of the Armagnac faction against the
Okay.
Duke of Burgundy.
Because they make a big deal about him being only an earl, whereas Anjou was a duke.
Right. And they're like, "Yeah, but also she's brave enough to be a poor. Like, it's okay that she's kind of poor because she's hella brave and she's hot, did I mention?" And Henny Six is like, "Yeah, I want the poor brave girl more than the random rich girl. Like, that sounds appealing to me. I like it." And Gloucester does not look happy.
Mm-mm.
And then Henny Six is like, "Get over it." Which he doesn't say to his uncle a lot because his uncle is his regent. He's only 17 or 18. He's young.
Okay, so I was confused. I thought I was going to have to watch 3 movies to do this with you, and then I looked, and it's only 2. And so I kind of looked into it, and the first play ends when they're talking about Margaret of Anjou, and then the second one starts either after they're married or they're about to get married. So it's like where
This
she
would be the
walks in
gap between
with
1 and 2.
Somerset is the beginning of the second play.
Yeah, this one was all over the place. I felt like it followed Shakespeare less. It took a bunch of stuff out, and it
Yeah.
didn't.
Well, they had to put 3 plays into 2 movies, so
And the movie wouldn't have been as good if it had just ended there. Like, I think they did a good job ending it where they ended it. No offense, Shakespeare, R.I.P. So Somerset is walking Meg into court, and Shakespeare left out my favorite part. Because when they first met in real life, she was on her boat coming over from France. And
Okay.
King Henry dressed up as a squire and delivered a note to her, like from himself.
Mm-hmm.
so he could get a peek at her, and she thought it was just a random squire. So she made him
Mm-hmm.
stay on his knees the whole time while she read the whole letter. And then she dismissed him. And it was only later that she found out that it was him that she had left on his knees while she read this whole
He,
letter.
he probably liked it.
Yeah, and more time to look at her probably, which is what it's his own fault for dressing up as a squire.
Yeah. Well, and that has shades of Henry VIII going to see Anne of Cleves and like giving her
Exactly.
this big old
Exactly.
kiss. She's like, "No, get away! I'm
Yeah,
betrothed."
but this ended better because he was like, yeah, she's pretty. You're right. She's hot. I'll take her. She's a little snooty to the squires, but, I was pretending to be a squire. I deserved it. So Shakespeare left that out, and I'm a little salty about that because that's my favorite part. And so Meg meets Henny Six, and we're pretending like they didn't just meet on that boat, and she left him on his knees while she read this entire letter. And he's like, you were right, Somerset. She is super hot. And she's like, oh, I think you're hot too. So, love at first sight. And they're
What
like,
was the
long
age
live Queen
difference?
Margaret.
Do we know?
I think they were pretty close to the same age. He might have been a tiny bit older, but they were
Okay.
both teenagers, I think, at the time. She was
Okay.
like 15, I think, and he would have been 17 or 18.
Okay.
But when I was 15, my boyfriend was 17. So that seems like a somewhat reasonable age difference.
Yeah.
Although, all of peace for the 100 Years' War was resting on her shoulders, and that seems like a lot to put on a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, and we have peace. But also the French get a lot of land back. They get Anjou, Paris, Rouen, and Maine. Because the English had taken over a lot of France.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rouen was the other thing I was thinking of. Like, duh, that's what they were. That was where Joan of Arc was, where they were sieging. Yeah, that was the other one.
Yeah.
And Paris, apparently.
There was another one that started with a G, but I don't remember what they said.
And the king leaves with Meg and her ladies. He's just like, well, that was a good day's work. I'm done, guys. And Gloucester's like, what the fuck, guys? Why did Hal V fight all that war just so we could give it away for this random French girl who's not even a princess? And Warwick is super mad too, but Warwick's always super mad in every rendition of Warwick that exists. He is super mad. And Plantagenet is all, what the fuck? We were supposed to get fat cash, not give it all away. Like, this is not how dowries are supposed to work.
Right.
And Winchester's like, we gotta watch out for Duke Uncle Hump because he's the heir apparent. He's next in line for the throne.
That's right.
Because he's the only uncle left alive.
Mm-hmm.
And Henny Six is an only child, so he doesn't have any brothers. And Richard is talking with his wife Cecily Neville, and there's two young men fighting, who I assume are Edward and Edmund, the two oldest sons of theirs.
Edmund was younger. Later on he says something to a young kid, and
he does, but that's not accurate. Edmund is the second. It's Edward's the oldest, then Edmund's next.
Okay.
And then George, and then Richard.
Okay.
But it was misleading later. It looks like he says Edmund to the boy who should have been playing George.
Okay.
So I don't know if Shakespeare had that wrong, or maybe I have that wrong, but Edward was the oldest, and then like 2 years younger was Edmund, and then there was a pretty big gap because there was a couple sisters, and then it was George and Richard were the two littlest.
Okay.
So
I assume Edmund died before Edward reached the throne, because I only remember George and Richard.
Yeah, he died with his dad.
Okay.
When their dad died, the second son was with him, whereas Edward was with Warwick.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You know the drill. Part 2 is on Patreon, and the link for Patreon is in the show description. See you there.
You'll be remembered. Thanks for listening.